It seemed like an ordinary workday, promising nothing out of the ordinary, until a frantic phone call shattered the quiet. The mother-in-law shrieked into the receiver, "Where is she? I'll rip all her hair out." She continued, her voice strained, "We broke down the door at her dacha. We wanted to celebrate New Year's, but there was a trap. Your brother's in the hospital." The husband immediately left work, and the two of them rushed to sort things out. But what awaited them behind the door of their own apartment turned their faces ashen with terror. Hello, dear listeners. I'm delighted to welcome you to my channel. I'm presenting a new, intriguing story for your enjoyment. Please listen in. Capitolina had never been fond of boisterous celebrations. For her, New Year's was synonymous with the scent of tangerines, the gentle crackle of candles, and classic films on television. However, everything changed after her marriage to Denis. His mother, Elvira Markovna, considered herself the supreme organizer of family gatherings and insisted that the newlyweds celebrate every holiday at her three-room apartment on the outskirts of town. Everyone would congregate there. Denis's younger brother, Roman, with his wife, distant cousins, their neighbor, Aunt Zina, and about 5 other people from their apartment building. Capitolina patiently chopped salads, washed dishes, and endured her mother-in-law's sharp remarks about how modern youth had no idea how to cook. Last winter, her patience finally snapped. Elvira Markovna, in front of all the guests, declared Capitolina to be a dull country mouse who couldn't even manage a manicure, let alone appear presentable in public. Denis remained silent, engrossed in his phone. Capitolina swallowed the insult, but something inside her broke. Then came the affair with the dacha. The small old house in the village of Yasnaya Polyana had belonged to Capitolina's grandmother. It had a plot of land spanning approximately 600 square meters, a leaning gazebo, apple trees, and a well with icy water. Capitolina visited every weekend, tending to the garden beds, painting the fence, and replacing the roofing sheets. It was her sanctuary, a place free from her mother-in-law's irksome voice and her husband's disapproving gaze. Elvira Markovna had been eyeing the dacha for a long time. At first, she hinted that it would be nice for the whole family to spend their summer holidays in the countryside. Then, she directly stated that since Capitolina was married to her son, the dacha was now common property. Denis nodded in agreement, saying his mother was right and there was no need to be stingy. Capitolina continued to visit alone in silence. In the spring, her mother-in-law attempted to achieve her goal through her son. Denis came home looking grim and immediately began, "Mom says you won't give us the dacha keys. That's not right. We're family." "The dacha is mine," Capitolina replied calmly, not looking up from her book. "So what? You're my wife now, which means it's mine too." "Legally, that's not the case," Capitolina stated. "The dacha was mine before we married. We don't have a prenuptial agreement. It's my personal property." Denis blushed. "Have you become completely greedy? Mom wants to plant a garden. She can buy her own dacha." The conversation ended with the slam of the door. Denis went to his mother's and didn't return for 3 days. After that, a heavy atmosphere settled in the house. Elvira Markovna called every evening. Denis's responses were monosyllabic, but Capitolina could feel the mounting tension. In the summer, a full-blown siege began. Her mother-in-law visited every Saturday, trying to accompany her to the dacha. She complained about her back hurting and needing to relax in the fresh air. Capitolina politely refused. Elvira Markovna then changed her tactics, starting to complain to Roman that her daughter-in-law had become utterly insolent and disrespected her elders. One day, Capitolina returned from the dacha to find that someone had attempted to force the lock on the gate. Neighbors mentioned seeing Roman's car. Capitolina said nothing, but the next day she replaced all the locks and installed cameras around the perimeter. Denis exploded. "Are you out of your mind, hiding from your own people?" "From strangers," she replied coldly. In the autumn, their relationship completely deteriorated. Elvira Markovna stopped greeting them. Denis spent more nights at his mother's than at home. Capitolina didn't object. She felt more at ease alone. She worked remotely as an editor for a publishing house, earning approximately 80,000 rubles a month. She could afford to be financially independent of her husband. In November, Elvira Markovna organized a family meeting. Everyone gathered: Denis, Roman with his wife Svetlana, and their cousin Irina. Kapitolina was summoned for a serious discussion. "We've conferred," the mother-in-law began solemnly, "and decided that we'll all go to your dacha for New Year's. Fresh air, barbecues, the sauna. Roman's doctor prescribed rest. He needs nature." Kapitolina looked intently at her mother-in-law, then at her husband. "No," Elvira Markovna's voice shot up. "Are you completely audacious? The dacha is mine. I haven't invited anyone there." "Denis," the mother-in-law wailed, "do you hear what your wife is saying?" Denis shifted uncomfortably. "Kappa, it's family, after all." "The dacha is mine," Roman interjected grimly. "Greedy, aren't you? Probably hiding a lover there." Svetlana giggled. Kapitolina stood up and silently left the apartment. At home, she turned off her phone and went to sleep. For the first time in months, she slept soundly. In the morning, Denis came to collect his belongings, saying he would stay with his mother for a while. Kapitolina nodded. He left, slamming the door. A week later, a message arrived from Elvira Markovna. "We're still going to the dacha for New Year's. It's my right as a mother." Kapitolina deleted it without replying. On December 28th, she drove to the dacha, unloading bags of groceries, a thermos of tea, and a stack of books from the trunk. She planned to spend New Year's Eve alone in quiet contemplation. Entering the house, she surveyed the interior. Everything was in its place. She sat by the window with a mug of hot tea and suddenly thought, what if they actually come? Elvira Markovna was the kind of person who never accepted the word no. She always got her way through scandals, tears, or manipulation. Kapitolina recalled how her mother-in-law had forced Denis to buy her a new television because the old one didn't show a good picture. How she had extracted money for an urgent operation that turned out to be a routine dental appointment. How she had persuaded Roman to take out a loan for her renovations, and she always received what she wanted. Kapitolina finished her tea and went outside. She walked around the property, checked the locks on the gate, the wicket gate, and the shed, and stood by the well. The cold December wind tousled her hair. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. She returned to the house, retrieved an old hunting trap from the pantry, a large, rusty piece of metal that her grandfather had used. Kapitolina had never understood why her grandmother kept it. Now she understood. The trap was heavy, its springs stiff. Kapitolina took it with both hands and carried it to the entryway. She placed it directly behind the door, carefully camouflaged it with an old floor cloth, and set the mechanism. The metal clicked ominously. She straightened up, wiping her hands on her jeans. Her heart beat steadily. There was no fear, no doubt, only a cold clarity. Afterward, she packed her belongings, locked the house securely, and drove back to the city. On the way, she stopped at a roadside cafe, had some coffee, and ate a cabbage pirojok. The waitress complained about the small tips. Kapitolina left her 200 rubles. On December 31st, she woke up late. She made herself some cocoa and sat down in front of the television. New Year's programs were playing on all the channels. Kapitolina watched distractedly. Somewhere deep in her consciousness lay an expectation. The phone rang at 1:30 in the afternoon. Elvira Markovna. Kapitolina picked up the receiver and immediately heard a shriek. "Where is she? I'll rip all her hair out." Kapitolina remained silent. Her mother-in-law was choking with rage. "We broke down the door at her dacha. We wanted to celebrate New Year's, but there was a trap. Your brother's in the hospital." "I am not Denis," Kapitolina said calmly. "It's you. You did this intentionally. I didn't invite you. We'll have you arrested for attempted murder. This is my private property. You entered illegally. I was defending my property." "How dare you?" Kapitolina hung up. Her hands didn't tremble. She finished her cocoa, opened her laptop, and checked her email. A letter arrived from the publishing house with a new project. 40 minutes later, there was a loud knocking at the door. Kapitolina calmly approached and looked through the peephole. Denis and Elvira Markovna, both red-faced and disheveled. Her mother-in-law was shouting something, waving her arms. Capitolina opened the door and saw them turn pale with horror. The entire apartment was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no dishes, no curtains. Just bare walls, bare floors. In the corner of the living room stood 2 suitcases and a stack of boxes labeled charity. In the middle of the room was a folding camping chair and a small table. On the table sat a laptop and a mug. "What? What is this?" Dennis croaked. "I'm moving out," Capitolina said evenly. "The apartment is yours, or rather, the mortgage is yours. The bills are on the table in the kitchen. I've paid my share through the end of the year. From now on, it's up to you." Elvira Markovna opened and closed her mouth like a fish. Finally, she managed to utter, "Is this about Roman? It was just an accident." "An accident is when you come by invitation," Capitolina retorted. "When you break down someone else's door and trespass in their home, that is a crime. We're going to the police." "Go ahead. I installed cameras at the dacha back in the summer. Everything is recorded there. How you broke the lock, how you kicked in the door, breaking and entering. I'll file a report as well." Dennis sagged. "Kappa, wait, let's talk." "There's nothing to talk about. I'll file for divorce after the holidays." "You're crazy. Roman's in the hospital. His leg is injured." "He should have thought twice before breaking into someone else's house," Elvira Markovna wailed. "I'll destroy you. I'll make your life miserable." Capitolina took out her phone and turned on the camera. "Please repeat that for the record." Her mother-in-law fell silent. Dennis grabbed her by the shoulder. "Mom, let's go. There's nothing to be done here." They left. Capitolina closed the door, turned the key, walked into the room, sat on the folding chair, and opened her laptop. On the screen was an advertisement for a rental, a 1-room apartment in the city center for 30,000 rubles a month. The owner. She dialed the number. A pleasant female voice answered immediately. "Hello? Can I see the apartment today?" "Of course. Write down the address." Capitolina jotted it down and then called a moving company to pick up her belongings the next morning. Then she opened her contact list, found the name Mom, and pressed call. "Kapochka, happy holidays, dear." "Mom, hi. I'm coming over for New Year's. Can I?" "What happened?" Her mother immediately heard something in her voice. "I'll tell you later. I'm leaving now. I'll be there in about 3 hours." "All right, my dear. We'll be waiting." Capitolina hung up, stood up, pulled on her jacket, took 1 suitcase. The second would be picked up tomorrow. She surveyed the apartment one last time. Empty, clean, nothing superfluous. She went downstairs, started the car, and drove onto the road. Outside the window, gray 5-story buildings flashed by, along with sparse pedestrians carrying shopping bags and festive lights on the lampposts. The scent of pies and pine needles filled her parents' home. Her mother opened the door and hugged her silently. Her father was sitting in front of the television, but stood up when Capitolina entered. "Something happened. I'm getting a divorce." "I see." Her father nodded. "And rightly so." Her mother stroked her daughter's head. "Go wash up, then we'll talk." That night, the 3 of them celebrated New Year's Eve. Her father opened the champagne, and her mother set the table. No one asked unnecessary questions. Capitolina sat on the old sofa, looking at the Christmas tree, and felt a heavy burden lift from her soul. At 2 o'clock in the morning, a message arrived from Dennis. "You'll regret this." Capitolina deleted it without finishing. Afterward, there was much unpleasantness. The division of property, Elvira Markovna's attempts to seek compensation for her son's injury. Roman wanted to file a lawsuit, but his lawyer explained that the cameras had recorded the break-in and he could then be prosecuted under the law. The case was dropped. Capitolina rented an apartment in the city center and found a new job as an editor at a major publishing house, earning 120,000 rubles. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Dennis tried to claim the dacha, but the documents were ironclad, pre-marital property. In the summer, she drove to the dacha again. As she approached, she felt anxious, wondering if they would try to break in again. But no, everything was quiet. The neighbors mentioned seeing a car in the winter, Then an ambulance came, and no one else. Capitolina unlocked the house. It smelled of dust and dampness. She threw open the windows, washed the floors, and hung new curtains. She took the trap outside and buried it in the far corner of the garden under an old apple tree. In August, while she was painting the porch, a car pulled up to the gate. Capitolina flinched, but it was just the neighbor, Uncle Vitya. "Capitolina Sergeyevna, you received a letter at the post office. I picked it up and brought it along." "Thank you." The letter was from a lawyer. Elvira Markovna had filed a claim for emotional distress. Capitolina chuckled and placed the envelope on the table. She would call her own lawyer tomorrow. Towards evening, it started to rain. Capitolina sat in the gazebo, sipping tea with honey and watching the rain drum on the leaves. A message arrived on her phone from her mother. "How are you, dear?" "Good. I'm tidying up the dacha. Come for lunch on Sunday. The neighbor wants to introduce you to her nephew. He's a good boy, works in IT. Capitolina smiled. "Mom, it's too early." "It's never too early. Life goes on." She put down her phone. The rain was subsiding. Somewhere beyond the trees, a crow cawed. Capitolina finished her tea, stood up, and went into the house. She still needed to attach shelves in the pantry. A year later, she coincidentally learned that Denis had remarried. Elvira Markovna was ecstatic. The new daughter-in-law seemed compliant. 6 months later, the compliant daughter-in-law took all his savings and ran off with her lover. Elvira Markovna caused a huge scene. Denis started drinking. Roman divorced. His wife grew tired of supporting him and his mother. Capitolina learned about this from a former colleague who lived in the same area. She listened and nodded. "I feel sorry for them." "Oh, come on," scoffed her colleague. "After everything they put you through." Capitolina shrugged. "Maybe a little, but not enough to matter." In September, she finally agreed to a date with the neighbor's nephew. His name was Kirill. He worked as a programmer, enjoyed hiking, and barely spoke to his mother, who had moved to Spain with her new husband. On their first date, he asked, "Do you really live alone at the dacha? Isn't it scary?" "No," Capitolina smiled. "Not at all." "And what if someone unexpected drops by?" She looked at him for a long moment. "I have good locks." Kirill laughed. They ordered more coffee. The next New Year's Eve, Capitolina celebrated at the dacha, not alone, but with Kirill. They arrived 2 days before the holiday, fired up the stove, and cleared away the snow. Kirill set up the Christmas tree. Capitolina prepared duck with apples. At midnight, they went outside, stood by the gate, and gazed at the dark, star-studded sky. Kirill put his arm around her shoulders. "Beautiful." "Yes," Capitolina nodded. Somewhere, far in the distance, music played, accompanied by laughter and shouts. Here there was silence. The snow crunched under their feet. The frosty air bit at their lungs. Capitolina leaned against Kirill. "Warm, calm, right." "Shall we go inside?" he asked. "You'll freeze if we stay out any longer." They stood, embracing, and looked at the stars. Capitolina thought about how, 2 years ago, she had come here alone, set a trap, and had no idea what would happen next. How she had feared their return, how she had slowly let go of fear and anger. And now it was New Year's, a new person beside her, a new life that she didn't have to share with anyone by force. "Good," Kirill said quietly. "Yes," she smiled. "Good." They returned to the house. Kirill added more logs to the stove. Capitolina poured wine into glasses. They settled into the old armchairs, covered themselves with blankets. Outside, snow fell. Inside, the logs crackled. Silence.